Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on the video. I certainly do appreciate it. This is a rambling video. I just want to update you on some things and give you guys some of my feedback on your feedback and just kind of give you an idea of what is going on in EzeeLinux land. First of all, I want to thank everybody who had nice things to say about XBT 1.7. That's the last video I posted, and that got some really nice comments and a lot of great feedback. And if you're using it and you like it, I'm really happy that you are, happy with it. But let me show you something. And I'll talk more about this toward the end of the video. I just want to show you this right up front. Now, for those of you who are looking on small devices with little screens or maybe low resolution screens, you might not be able to see that I have a little icon over here in the favorites, and it says XBT. And when I click on it, this is what I get. That's right, XBT version 2.0 is in the works and will be available for people to play with and poke at and use at their leisure sometime in the not too distant future. There are still some things that need to be worked out. It's kind of like 99% there at this point. I want to test it and play with it and just kind of get a feel for it and see if I can make it even better than it already is. And I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video. I'll talk some more about that as well, because I want to get into some things about bash scripting and talk about learning about the command line and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and exit this for now, and then we will talk about that in a little while. First thing that I really want to get into here is talk about Linux Mint 18.3. This has turned out to be one of the very best Linux distributions that I have ever seen ever. The level of polish that the Linux Mint team has put into this is just stunning. And I have talked to a lot of people, and I'm talking about maybe 200-300 people that have either upgraded or they've switched over to Linux Mint, and they're really, really liking it. It is an amazing distro. And a couple of folks that I have talked to have had a few nagging issues. I have one friend that just converted his computing life pretty much all over to Linux. And when he upgraded to 18.3, he ran into some issues with his hardware. So it turned out that just putting him on the right kernel was the way to fix it. And it seems to be working fine, knock on wood. And I really, I hate it when somebody is just starting out with something and then they run into one of these niggling little issues like that, because it gives them a bad impression of the system. But we got it straight, and it's working good, and it's all set up on his hardware. I'm also working directly with a lot of other people who are coming to Mint for the first time or switching to Mint. That's what I've mostly been doing with my computing lately, as I end up sitting down and answering people's questions. I'm getting a lot of questions and have a lot of conversations with folks. The other thing that's going on, of course, around here is the fact that we're getting ready for Christmas. Now, whatever you celebrate in your part of the world or whatever you celebrate in your house, I hope it's a happy one. There's a lot of end-of-year festivities. We do Christmas around here, and it looks like it's going to be a really fun Christmas. We got a lot of things going on, so I digress from talking about Linux Mint a little bit, but I've been having a bit of a problem keeping up with my own correspondence lately and getting posts out and things like that, just simply because there's just so much going on. And of course, I have been working on XBT 2.0, which has become a bit of an obsession, and it sucks up my time. But a lot of the people that I have been working with have been using Linux Mint, and they're really liking it. This is a great distribution. They just outdid themselves, and I'm kind of really anxious to see what they do with Linux Mint 19, which will probably be out next summer. But I'm also quite tempted to just kind of wait, really just kind of set up a policy where I'm just going to wait for like Linux Mint 19.1 before I even think about getting off of this. Right now, this is running on every machine I own. I've got 5 computers doing it. I'm also supporting a bunch of people who are running it, and just had very little problems with it. So I just wanted to say that Linux Mint is really cool. right now, and it's a good distro to go to if you're starting out or you're just tired of dealing with garbage and you just want something stable. Works great. And it has got me thinking about updating a lot of videos that have been up for quite some time, like I did a video called Beginner's Guide to Installing Linux Mint 18, which has served well through all of the different point releases, but 18.3 is actually quite different. So that video may get an update at some point, but for right now it serves well. There are some things in there that I really don't want to talk about when it gets to doing another one. There were some little tweaks and things that I put in there that are confusing people, and they're trying to do them when they're first starting out. And I guess at the time it just never occurred to me that that would be a little bit much for them. So the next one, when I do a big guide to installing Linux Mint, it's going to be very much simplified. We're just going to show people how to do simple installs. And then if they want to advance and do other things later once they get comfortable with it, then they most certainly can. So anyhow, just wanted to talk about that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is Bash. I want to talk about Bash scripting. I want to talk about learning how to work with Linux, learning the system, because a lot of people lately have been asking me, where do you learn this stuff? How do you learn it? Well, there's all kinds of ways. You can scan the internet. There's a ton of great information up there about Bash, but you have to kind of know what you're looking for to get the good out of it. But it's all there. I mean, it's all documented. So if you want to work in a terminal and you want to learn how to live in a terminal and navigate in it and write scripts and do things like that, it's all online. It just takes a little while to figure out. But if you're really interested in the system and you want to learn how Linux works, you can take classes, of course. I mean, the Linux Foundation has classes available through edX. I've talked about those in the past. All you got to do is look up Introduction to Linux from the Linux Foundation, and then you can figure out how to get that class. It takes a little while. It's a kind of a big class, and it takes a while to get through, but it's definitely worth the time. And you can go to edX and look. It's all online. All you got to do is do a search for that. It's a good one. But another thing that you can do is to read some good books. And these are the two that I like the best. I've read a lot of books about Linux. And if you read these two books, they're not cheap. I mean, to get them both, it's going to cost you some money because they're big, heavy books, but they're really well written. And between the two of them, you get a really good idea of how the system works. And they are up to date enough where you can get a feel for how Linux is in 2017. So the first one I want to talk about is this one, which is How Linux Works, 2nd edition. And it's written by Brian Ward, and it's available from this company called No Starch Press. You can get it on Amazon, whatever works for you. One that I highly recommend. This book is really just explaining how the system works and all the little subsystems and everything in it. It doesn't go into huge detail, and it's written in such a way that you can read a chapter and you can get as much as you can out of it. And then the author, he actually says, okay, if you're not interested in learning more about the minutia, you can go ahead and skip ahead. Great book, but it doesn't quite cover everything. Now, here's one of my favorites, which has actually been really useful. It's called The Linux Command Line. And the guy's name is William E. Schatz, Jr., who wrote it. This is a very good book, and it takes you from learning how to open up a terminal and type in the ls command to writing scripts. It's a good reference book, especially since I've been working on scripts lately. So these are the two books that I really, really recommend to people. The problem with a lot of books is that if they get too specific, they're immediately out of date, because Linux moves so fast. And this is an ever-changing landscape. So therefore, it's kind of hard to write a book that is going to be useful years down the road. Like, for instance, there's a YouTuber on here, Jay LaCroix, who I watched for a long time. He hasn't posted much lately, but Jay really taught me a whole lot, and he actually has written a couple of books about Linux, and one of them is called Linux Mint Essentials. And in that book, he talks about Linux Mint 16, And the book was published, and then Linux Mint came along with the 17 series and completely changed how the versioning works. A lot of things in the desktop changed, just minor changes, but it's like the book almost immediately was out of date. Now, you can get that book, and I do recommend it, and he really gets into the basics of how the system works. But I mean, so much has changed in Linux Mint, and that book just came out in 2014. So 3 years later, it's just a lot of stuff that I can go through that book now and go, oh, that's changed, that's changed. They don't have that program anymore. They don't do that. So, but these books, since they concern themselves mainly with the system itself and command lines, they don't really talk a whole lot about desktops. They're going to be around for a while because Bash doesn't change all that much. There are things in Bash that are there for been there for 20 years. So, or before, when there was no Bash, when it was SH, there's many of the things that have come over from there. So great books to start out with, and I will put a link to the No Starch Press site in the description for this video, but you're probably going to want to find the books on like Amazon or whatever is convenient to you, depending on what part of the world you're in, because anyway, you understand what I'm trying to say. So yeah, man, what else did I want to talk about here? Just a whole lot of really nice people out there, a lot of comments. The website is just growing by leaps and bounds. The YouTube channel just seems to be getting more subscribers all the time. I'm looking forward to a really cool 2018. I think this is going to be a really good year for open source and Linux, and I am excited to see things come along like Ubuntu. When Ubuntu 18.04 comes along, that's going to be one to really look at, because Ubuntu has changed so much. And then, of course, Linux Mint 19. We have Linux Mint Debian Edition, the new one. It's going to be LMDE 3, and it's codenamed Cindy, which I think is funny, because I told Cindy, she's my lady, I said, well, your computer's going to get loaded with Linux Mint Debian Edition, Cindy. So I can just SSH into it, and I can see Linux Mint Cindy. The name of the computer is Cindy. So, Cindy at Cindy, running Cindy. Anyway, that's something I'm going to be looking at as it rolls along. I still get a lot of people who ask me all the time, will you look at this distro and that distro? And I'm going to tell you what, folks, I've kind of gotten to a place now where I'm not really terribly interested in things that are outside of Ubuntu official flavors and Linux Mint. It's not that I'm knocking all the other distros. It's just that I have found that I can speak more authoritatively when talking about Ubuntu-based things and Debian and, not Debian proper, but, like any Debian or Ubuntu-based Linux. That is where I have gravitated to, and I know more about it than anything else. RPM-based Linux or Arch Linux, just not my thing. And so I've kind of decided that this year we won't be doing a lot of quote-unquote distro reviews. We're going to be looking at Ubuntu, we're going to be looking at Linux Mint, and we're going to be talking about how people who are just starting out with Linux Mint can, get the most out of it. We're going to continue down that road. So that is my plan. All right, more about XBT, because I just want to, before I wrap this up, for those of you who are the development type people and that sort of thing, XBT, as I mentioned in the last video at the end, has been a learning experience for me. And because I have found that you can read a great deal of information about how to do things in the terminal and, in Bash and stuff like that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be able to just sit down and do it. What it is that you have to have a reason to do it. You have to have something in mind, and you absorb that information, and then later on you go, oh, that's how you would do that, right? And then it makes sense to you. So that's part of what's happened with the whole XBT project here. And I'm just going to open this up to show you guys something, because the original XBT when I first started playing around with it was like 4 lines of code. And it has grown now. Let's see. I'm just still scrolling. It's going on and on and on. Here we go. Here we go. It's a full-size program. And we are over 500. It's telling me this is, what? 506. I had to lean down and look at that because the microphone's a little in the way. That's probably why I sounded like I was talking in a box there for a second. And that's amazing to me that it has turned into something that is that big. And then the other thing that I have had to figure out how to do and just teach myself is how to create an icon, how to create a simple install and uninstall script. Do I want to, another thing was people said, well, why don't you put it up on Git? I'm not ready for Git yet. I'm not doing enough to make it worth the time and effort for me to figure out how to use Git on top of doing this. However, that will probably come down the road because I have a feeling that I'm probably going to be doing a lot more of this because I'm getting such a charge out of the learning experience. Because it's like art. You're trying to figure out how to create not only an application to get something done, which is what a script is, but it's also a matter of crafting a user experience. And I'm getting a big charge out of doing that. It's like, I really want to make the new XBT something that is going to be very, very, very user-friendly. So I've spent a great deal of time working on menus. There is a lot of information in here. There's a lot of there are a lot of errors that actually help you. So if something doesn't work, it suggests what you can do to make it work, that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily just a script that, oh, you do this function and if it errors out, well, sorry, it just exits and you're done and you have no idea what's going on. This is an actual interactive program. Now, it just happens to be written in the shell. So that means that you will be able to click on it in a menu. That's what I wanted because a lot of folks were having problems with working with a terminal. I just getting things set up and then dragging things into a bin folder. So I kind of went, okay, well, really what I need to do is come up with an installation process that will install it on the system in such a way that they don't have to do anything. So right now I've got it down to where all you got to do is extract the zip file, open up the little directory that comes out of it, the folder, and then, all you got to do is, click on the install and it installs it on the system. That's it. If you want to get rid of it, just keep that directory around or, keep the zip file around, extract it again, do uninstall, XBT disappears from your system. It's that simple. I've thought about packaging it. Somebody suggested, well, why don't you put it in a deb file if it's aimed at Linux Mint and Ubuntu? I looked at it. It's very complex to do deb packaging. And it's more than I can handle right now, and it's not very well documented, to be quite honest. So my hat is off to any programmer out there or anybody who is doing that kind of work because just trying to get the documentation of how to create the package and all of the steps that you have to go through was really, really daunting. Because there's several different tutorials out there and there's several different web pages to talk about it. Everybody has a slightly different spin on it, and half of the stuff that they talk about doesn't work. So I'm sorry, but there it is. And of course, those of you who know how to do it, oh, it's easy, man. No, it's not easy if you've never tried before. Up until somebody made the suggestion, there was no way that I had ever envisioned myself creating deb packages. So yeah, there's a lot for me to learn. I'm not a programmer. My experience programming computers was programming automation systems, which is an entirely different animal. And I'm kind of getting a charge out of it because I enjoyed doing the automation too. And when will the final version of this come out? And when will it be ready for you to play with? Well, I'm gonna sit on it for a while, as I said in the beginning of the video. I want to make sure that this is just about perfect. Because once I issue this particular version, it's probably just going to go into maintenance mode. I want to keep it down to the absolute basic nitty-gritty features necessary. A lot of people have ideas. Well, why can't you automate the thing? It's not really intended to be automated. If you need an automated backup solution, then there's about 40 million different scripts that you can write that will do that, and there's much more complex systems that do that. Actually, you don't really need anything complex. You just need to learn how to use the rsync command, and you can come up with something. If the drive's already hooked to the machine all the time, then you don't need a program to manage it. You don't. This is for USB drives that you will remove from the machine. So people who are going, well, why don't you do that? The other thing is that somebody said, well, why don't you set it so that you can exclude certain things? Well, that's not the point of the program. The point of the program is to make an exact copy of whatever you got going on, because it will allow you to get back to where you were if you should have to. If you start excluding things, you never know what you might need. And we're talking about directories. One guy said, well, why am I backing up my cache? Because if you ever had to restore the system and put it back the way it was, or maybe you intentionally want to reinstall your system, you're not using timeshift, CYA, you want to just start over, or you want to move to another distro, there might be some stuff in there that you need. So I'm not going to, the more you give people options to do, the more of a chance they have screwing up their own stuff, and then it doesn't work. And then they go, well, the program didn't work. It's not the program didn't work, they didn't know how to use it. So I'm trying to keep it very simple and very straightforward, and also make it where it is just to actually use the program doesn't take any thought at all. That's the point that I want. I want it pointy and clicky and one option and turn it loose, and oh, it worked. Great. Now you can unplug the drive. Just yank the drive out of the machine, close the program. That's what I'm looking for, because it's the I think that's where the big need is. I mean, backup software, even for backup software from the point of view of somebody who is very versed in how the system works and where things are stored and how it all happens, it can look terribly simple to them. And if you have somebody who is a newbie and they're just starting out, or maybe they don't care, they just, they use their computer to do 3 or 4 things, they run the updates and that's it, and they're not getting into the system, and then all of a sudden they have a problem, for them it becomes a big trauma to try and figure out, well, I don't understand. I've been using this backup software and now I don't know how to restore. Now I don't know how to do that. So that's what we're doing here with XBT, is all the basic functions are within this program, and they work in a very rigid and draconian way. This is how it's going to work. It's like you follow the bouncing ball, it'll be all right, And I guess I kind of sound a little bit like Steve Jobs at this point from Apple. You will do it our way. I understand that. But, this is open code anyway that I'm giving away. So if you want to play with it, you go right ahead. You want to change it, knock yourself out, have a good time. All I ask for is credit at this point. Yeah, just make sure that you give me credit. So anyway, the new version of this is going to be ready very soon. And I just released 1.7, but even as I was working on 1.7, I was thinking in the back of my brain, I want to push this to another level. I want it to be a different kind of program. So somewhere in the not too distant future, I'm going to rework the EzeeLinux Bash scripts page. I don't think XBT is going to be part of the EzeeLinux Bash script collection anymore. I think it's going to have its own little section there, and I still have to write up documentation and for it, the installation process, but I'm still working all that stuff out, and I haven't 100% decided exactly how I want to pull that off. That's another thing, is that, I was talking about documentation for creating deb packages. Well, if you don't want to create a deb package, now you run into this thing about how to create launchers, the desktop launchers, and where to put them so the system will find them. That sounds simple, doesn't it? Oh, you just create this little launcher and then you do it. That ain't simple. There's a lot of conflicting garbage on the internet about how to do that with GNOME-based desktops. And it's like, wow, man. I finally ended up having to I gave up. I mean, I looked for a couple hours on that one, and I was like, this should be easy. It's one little file. And so what I ended up doing was just kind of poking around in my own system and seeing how it was done and where they went and that sort of thing. And then grabbed one and kind of back-engineered it and went, okay. So I started out with theirs and then made it work with my program, and so it's fun. It's a fun thing to do, is to kind of figure all this stuff out, because once you learn from panic and you're trying to get something to work, you just never forget it. It sticks in your head. I said something about credit earlier, and I wanted to say this before I wrapped up this video, because I have rambled on way too much, and first of all, I want to say thank you very much to Jeremy O'Connell from CyberWeb Solutions. He's been kind of like my sounding board as I've rolled through this and helped me get through some sticky points. I gave him credit last time. Also, I want to thank Jody James from the OB Revenge product. That's a friend of EzeeLinux, even though OB Revenge is not a distro that I would support because it's really cutting edge. It's an Arch-based distro, and you can look up more about OB Revenge. Jody kind of came up with that, and he's really got a flair for putting things together. So he actually sent me some gobs of code as I was thinking about changing it. And I guess we were kind of thinking along the same lines. So he sent me a bunch of stuff. Now, I didn't use his stuff directly in the software. A few things did end up there, but I certainly used it as a springboard to get the flow control figured out, and how is this supposed to work, and how can I get all these different functions to work together. So it wasn't just somebody telling me that. It wasn't just somebody reading me a book. He just sent me an example, which thank you very much. That was very kind of you to do. And Jody's having some issues right now. I don't know whether he wants that to be public at this point, but you may not see him be working too much on OB Revenge. He's just got a lot going on in his life, and he kind of let me know that. And so I want to thank him for taking the time to send me some stuff and to sit down and bang that out. I kind of know what he's going through. So everybody send him. I just really can't get into detail because I don't want to do that. But he may tell you himself if you know Jody. But everybody out there who knows what OB Revenge is and knows a bit about that project, send him some positive vibrations right now because he needs them. Let's put it that way. And I don't know when the next video is going to be because, like I said, we're about, what are we? We're 11 days from Christmas. Got a lot going on. And so it's just going to be whenever I come up with something to do a video about and have time to actually put it together, that sort of thing. So thank you to everybody who has been very kind and subscribed and followed what I've been doing for the last year. This has been an incredible year for EzeeLinux, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that before the year is out. I want to kind of do a year in review video later on as well. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you for watching. Do check out EzeeLinux on the web. Check out EzeeLinux on Facebook. You'll see the links to the No Starch Press there. You can look at those books. And also, do check out what was I going to tell you about? Did I tell you about Freedom Penguin? Freedom Penguin, yeah, it's the bomb. Oh, check out EzeeLinux on Facebook. Did I say that? I did? I think I covered it all. Okay, we're good then. All right, I'm gone, gang. Everybody be safe during the holiday season. We'll talk again soon.